Yeah. That's living. Real living. Me, be me. Yes, no other like me, no other, and I love it. Those may say there's someone that looks like me, but they can never be me, and that's just it. That's just it. So, being on YouTube is like playing the lottery. One out of 15,000 chances that you get um, noticed and seen. Like they say, um, shadow banning is real out here, and popularity is the thing, you know. So I never encourage people to subscribe to me because the whole thing is if you want to subscribe, if you like what you see, if you like what I say, then you're gonna do what you do. If you don't, and majority of the people in the world probably won't, and I don't expect them to like what I say because who are they to tell, who are they to say what is good and what is bad? That's my whole concept of everything in this life. We got to recognize that we cannot allow people to dictate to us, especially people who have done nothing but bad to us, to dictate to us what is heaven, what is good, and what is bad. Because when you do that, you're allowing war to be perpetrated upon you continuously, and you don't even know it. So for me, you know, it is what it is. That's all I can say. This we're in a battle for everything. And let me talk about real quick something that I was noticing. Iowa, they won, and I watched when they won against. Think they won against North Carolina, right? And um, I can tell something about the lady. Just what the same thing I see in the football player. What's his name? Um, they talk about him all the time. The white football player who, you know, is the lead. I guess the lead in his team that keeps retiring and coming back and got a. I guess he was married, had a baby, and ended up divorced. Of course, that's typical in this society to be expected. Um, but and then there is another, a female side, basketball. We look at that part, and we look at the white girl that they boost up and everything, and in Iowa, she's the lead on Iowa, and I think she's older than the other ladies, right? So, and she's a senior, so she's played longer than they did, and she's bringing them into their winning streak, right? Her team. But I noticed a racial aspect to all of that because it started, all of this started for us well, and long ago. All of this started for us, the competitive, the competing, the wanting to be better than, you know, if there is such thing in reality is better than. Unfortunately, this is a new reality, and we think it's been our reality for a long time, but it hasn't. Not until the European came aboard and made it our reality, where you have to be better than the next man, right? Because they are something that was always less than. So it's important for them to prove for themselves that they are better than. And let me see if I can find this. Let me see if I can find this here. Because there's controversy now over a sister. You see, I always say what's good for the goose is not good for the gander. And it's just that's just the way it is because they have the upper hand. Caucasian people have the upper hand on evil. This is why we have evil in the world. But for some reason, the common sense of people and the space that I have to exist in with them cease to exist in that fact. We blame everything else for evil when they gave you a devil. They told you about the devil. They told you about the God. They told you about the good aspect and the bad aspect. They deemed us the devil. They deemed us the devil. And that's just facts. I'm not boosting anything that is a lie. So let's hear it from their perspective.
Sitting on the bench because the referees took over. And I'll tell you what, the refs should thank Angel Reese for giving the old John Cena to Caitlin Clark. You can't see me. I've never seen so many people react to, you know, what Reese did with Clark walking off the floor and LSU dominating Iowa yesterday in the final throws of that game. And we'll discuss why they took such a big lead in the first place. But look, Angel
Okay.
is giving Caitlin Clark something we've seen, out of an LSU national champion before, have we not? Joe Burrow did that. Walking off the
Pointed
field.
right to it.
Right to his ring finger.
Bam.
Didn't have a problem with that, did we?
Well, actually, she was giving Caitlin back what Caitlin was giving
Well,
everyone else.
I'm getting to that.
Yeah.
But I'm just saying,
Do unto
first and
others what
foremost,
you would have done to you.
Joe Burrow did this on a
Well,
football
white
field.
people have a problem with that, and
And
some
we're all
black
like, how
people
cool is
have a
that?
problem with
You know
that.
what
They
else
call
they-
Joe
themselves
Burrow, Joe
Christians
Cool.
in this
And-
society
and-
that we live
and
in.
also-
But I digress.
As you pointed out, Angel's only giving Caitlin what she did in a national semifinal game against Haley Van Lith of Louisville. So she's getting back what she gave. And what she also got back is what she gave was a ton of three-pointers just being thrown in by wide open LSU basketball players yesterday. And that has been the national conversation out of all this, is why is it cool and great for Caitlin Clark to do this? And why is it all cool to see Joe Burrow do it? And then when Angel Reese does it, everybody's thinking that is totally out of line. Do I want to see taunting by anybody? Is this something that my daughter at age 9, I want her to see and be taught? No. Is this something that we see over and over and over again by spectacularly talented, highly competitive individuals, men who do it? And we're like, that is cold, but understand it's Joe Cool. Joe Cool. Joe Burrow's got ice in his veins pointing to his ring finger. And Angel Reese does it, and the whole world is up in arms about it. This stuff happens. And we should understand the circumstances under which it is done. And I understand that that Caitlin Clark didn't do it to LSU, so why is LSU doing it to her? And so on and so on.
Now I gotta pause that
This was
because hold on.
Angel Reese.
This is that individual mentality when it comes to war. We're in a war. We don't know that it may be a few that are enacting what they're enacting, but it's for the greater good. It's for the greater good of their own, right? So what he's about to talk about is they didn't have it done to them, right? But they know of it been done to people, right? And the sheer fact that we know that there are black women and men and children that have been murdered at the hands of white people, we are not to let that slide by. Just because somebody else didn't do the murder does not mean that they weren't a part of it. And I hold white society as a whole, and you can check my channel. I never once blamed black men or black women for their destructional mentality, because you got to understand, you let your baby be influenced by dangerous things. Dangerous things are going to build that child's mind to be a dangerous mind, to be destructional, to be self-hating, to be unloving, to be selfish. And this is the world that's been built around our people. And he's about to talk about how they may not have had it done to them, but it's a cultural, because they popularized this woman, this white woman, and her doing that. They popularized white men and their degeneracy that they do. So when you popularize that and you uplift that, what you are doing is you making a culture of a degeneracy habit, of a degenerate habit. So to make it stop, something has to be done. And I give kudos to that Sister Angel for doing her part in the world and putting an end to that by letting that girl sit in her own doing. Let's continue.
After the game, explaining what that was all about.
All year, I was critiqued about who I was. Nobody, I don't, the narrative, I don't fit the narrative. I don't fit in the box that y'all want me to be in. I'm too hood, I'm too ghetto. Y'all told me that all year. But when other people do it, y'all don't say nothing. So this was for the girls that look like me, that's gonna speak up on what they believe in. It's unapologetically you. And that's what I did it for tonight. This was for the more than, it was bigger than me tonight. It was bigger than me. Twitter is gonna go in a rage every time. And I mean, I'm happy. I feel like I've helped grow women's basketball this year. I'm super happy and excited. So I'm looking forward to celebrating in the next season.
Every lady on that floor helped grow women's basketball yesterday. That's for damn sure. I've spent the first 5 minutes talking about it, and I'll be very honest, straight up with you. This is the first 5 minutes I've been talking about it all year long. But I would love to talk basketball as well. 23 points, 15 rebounds. That's what Angel Reese averaged this year, coming from Maryland, and she's from Baltimore, as she was talking about as well.
15 rebounds a game.
She's so good. She's so good. If only she played in the second quarter yesterday. And I'll tell you what, the referees should be thrilled that Angel Reese threw her hand in front of her face and pointed to her ring finger in front of Caitlin Clark, because otherwise we'd be talking about how we were robbed. Honestly, the officiating in that game was maddening.
Mm-hmm.
I was watching from the middle of the first quarter on yesterday. I picked it up a little bit late. That arena in Dallas was salty on both sides of this game. They were freaking out in that crowd because it was obvious from jump. There are whistles all over the place. The top two players on LSU, with Angel being number one in my book, sat the second quarter. Caitlin Clark picked up an early foul. So did seemingly half of Iowa. It was dreadful. It was absolutely, positively awful. And then Caitlin Clark in the second half, as Iowa cut a huge deficit, 22 points at one point, down to single digits. LSU goes to the line after another whistle on Iowa, and Clark takes a bounding basketball that was just still bouncing from the play that had just been whistled again by the refs dead. She's walking back to her huddle as the Iowa Hawkeyes are huddled in the paint, while LSU's going to the line, and Clark takes the ball and just whips it out of bounds towards where, camera operators and, photographers would be, and she gets teed up, which is another personal foul, which gave her 4. Yeah. And it's just like, come on. What are we doing here? What are we doing here? After the game, the ref said, well, there was a delay of game penalty on Iowa earlier in the quarter, and they were already on notice, and the rules say that if you throw a ball out of bounds and it's a competitive disadvantage, as if we forgot the play was stopped. It was terrible. Mm-hmm. Absolutely, positively awful. But out of all of the foul trouble came an incredible story as well. I just want to hit this. Jasmine Carson. I have never seen her play a basketball game, and it was delightful. She did not score a single point in LSU's Sweet 16, Elite 8, and Final Four national semifinal victories to earn the right to play in this game. She didn't score a single point. And she, because of the foul trouble, came in and lit it up to the tune of 21 points. She was heat checking from the minute she crossed half court and made every damn shot. She didn't miss, including the one at the buzzer right before halftime to just put the exclamation point on LSU's remarkable first half.
Banks were open.
Woo! It was. That bank open at the end of that first half. It was unbelievable. She didn't score a point in the 3 previous games, and she scored 21, and she made the most of the foul trouble. And obviously LSU won. But honestly, the refereeing, Kim Mulkey was truly, it seemed like on occasion, a 6th LSU defender on the floor. She was involved in UConn's offensive sets, and she didn't get She didn't get teed up.
How did that not get a tee?
She didn't get teed up.
I just saw a clip of her grabbing a ref.
By the way, she's easy to notice. She was wearing some wild sequin. By the way, very nice.
I mean, that looks like Seth Rollins.
But look at her. She's on the floor. She was on the floor the whole game. Yeah. These are all things that we're not even talking about today because Angel Reese did what Joe Burrow did and what Caitlin Clark did. Mm-hmm. And everybody's treating her like she's ruining sport. Catch the Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku channel, 12 to 3 Eastern.
Sad, but it's true. Y'all rather live in hell.
We're going to field questions from the student athletes and then take questions from
Coach. Live in
Coach.
hell than heaven.
How y'all doing? Thank you. This girl funny.
This mine? This mine? What is like? Okay. No, I'm good.
Oh, you finna show it. I can hear it in your tone. You finna show it. Welcome to the Division I Women's Basketball National Championship post-game press conference featuring the LSU Tigers. We're going to hear from our student athletes. We're going to open it up for questions. We'll go to our front with Doug.
Doug Farmer, Associated Press. Andrew, what does it mean to win the title here for LSU and to, quote, put a ring on it, so to speak?
I'm super happy for the program first, but this is bigger than me. I mean, I had so many goals coming into LSU, but I didn't think I was going to win a national championship within my first year at LSU. I mean, I'm just happy for this team. Coach Mulkey, I appreciate you. Can't thank you enough for giving me this opportunity to play under you and get better, and I'm just happy right now.
Going to take a question to our left.
Maggie Hendricks from Bally Sports over here. I have 2 questions for you, Angel. One, are you going to get a new crown? Are you going to upgrade it?
This one right here, you felt this?
I mean,
I don't know. They might get me right. We gonna see.
Okay. And then my other question, if I can open my phone, is we see you grab your teammates' heads and talk to them especially when you're on the bench and they're coming off and they played well. Saw you do it with both Jasmine and Alexis. What are you thinking in those moments? What do you want to get through to them?
Just staying confident, whatever's going on, especially when I'm on the bench, I'm seeing things that they might not see on the court. So just trying to help them and keep them confident within the game. Yeah.
Want to stay to go? We're going to go to our right.
Michael Cobble, WBRZ TV for Angel and Jazz. Could you just talk about the job that Lex has done throughout the course of the tournament? Each game she's improved, right? Her production, her defensive play, I guess. Just we know she's taking a lot of things personally, but she's performing at such a high level.
Lex, she's a first rounder. I mean, I've said it all year. I told Lex, don't turn on and off. You can kill every single possession that you can if you really want to. And I told her that. And she just gets into a mode where she's just unstoppable at some point. And she played a great defensive game. I mean, it wasn't just all her offense tonight. It was her defense. Caitlin is a great player for sure. I mean, she still had 30, but we contained her as best as we could. And we just knew that the supporting cast, other players couldn't go off. So I think Alexis has just been a great player. I mean, overall her career, she's just been great.
We're going to go to our left. Oh, I'm sorry. Yes.
Yeah, backing off what Angel said, Lex, she's just a great player and even better person. And, I can't even, I'm just very proud of her. She stepped up in big moments in the NCAA tournament. And I'm just really proud of her, and I know her future is bright.
We're going to go to our left.
Scott Rappley with the Baton Rouge Advocate. Jasmine, 2 questions. If maybe you had 55 points in high school or something like that, but was this the game of your life? And when you got up this morning, what did you think you could contribute to this game, to this team?
I would definitely say this is the game of my life because, I won a national championship on the biggest stage possible, in college. But when I woke up, I just wanted to win. I wanted to do anything that, my team needed in this game, whether it was defense, rebounding, just anything, supporting them. And, I scored tonight, and that's what, pushed us and got us momentum. And I'm just proud of my teammates.
To our right.
Hey, Jazz, Remy from the New York Times. Congrats on an amazing game. I think a lot of people met you for the first time today. What should the world know about you?
I'm Jasmine. I've been working hard my whole life, and I came to LSU just to, contribute and win a national title. I wanted to play on the Hall of Fame coach and play with great players. And, hard work pays off, and God is great. Everybody's journey is different, and you should just embrace your journey. I couldn't have wanted a better ending than for it to end like this.
Jim Klein, Peter with the Baton Rouge Advocate. Alexis, Iowa made their big push. You knew it was coming. What was going through your mind? It looked like you took over the game when they got within 7.
No threes. That's the only thing I kept telling my teammates. Whatever we do, we'll take 2s over 3s. It was a great team. We knew that they were going to make runs. Coach Starkey had been telling us that in the huddle they're going to make runs, but we have to stay composed. And as a leader on the team, I have to keep everybody calm in those moments. It's very important not to panic. And I think, when I do go score in those moments, it just settles my team down. It keeps everybody cool-headed and level-headed in those moments.
Going to our right-hand side.
Ainville, Maria McElwain, Philadelphia Inquirer. You mentioned those supporting players on this team. Obviously, you had a good game too, but how important was it to have them? And do you feel like that's kind of what made the difference today?
Yeah, no, this wasn't about me. This is all about the supporting cast. Everybody has played a role all season, and tonight, just coming from the bench, Jazz, Poa, Samaya, they came and stepped up and played big. I mean, they didn't, for Jazz, she probably didn't want to go out as a senior, go out the wrong way, and she wanted to win. So she did whatever it took to win. And Poa played a great job coming in when Alexis was in foul trouble, and then Samaya, as a freshman, just getting big rebounds, being aggressive as well as she can. And I just think everybody played their role, and that was our goal this year, just everybody piecing it together.
Staying to our right.
Alexa Philippi with ESPN. For Alexis and Jasmine, you guys had talked about taking personally the way that South Carolina was guarded by Iowa and having that be something that you wanted to take advantage of today. And obviously we saw that with your shooting. So what about that was something that you wanted to exploit, and how do you think you're able to get that going today?
I mean, we watched film on how they were playing South Carolina, and I had an idea that they were probably going to try to sag off us in the beginning. So, I mean, as a shooter, when somebody sags off you, I mean, that's the green light. And that's what we capitalized off tonight.
I knew going into this game, Iowa wouldn't be able to guard us. the same how they guarded South Carolina. So I just kind of like we just had to read the defense and make the right plays and not try to force anything. Just be LSU. Stay true to our identity and what got us here to this point. And what I said was I didn't say Iowa played disrespectful defense. I said to me personally, if someone was to sag off of me, then as a competitor and as someone who puts in the time and the hours and I dedicate time in perfecting my shot, then I would take that as disrespectful. So, and I had complimented Iowa. I said they have great defensive schemes. Like that was clever. That's intelligent. You should play that way. You have to play to your strengths and your weaknesses, and that's what Iowa does on defense. And I gave credit to them. They're a great team, a great coaching staff. Caitlin's a great player. She's literally changing the game. She's changing the game for us right now. Her and Angel, they're doing a great job. And I just want to make that clear that I give respect when it's due and I give credit when it's due.
Go to our left, Lindsay.
Lindsay Schnell, USA Today. Angel, Twitter is awash right now with outrage. And you've talked before about your personality, that you don't care. And I just wondered what it's like to know that, I mean, so many people are talking about women's basketball. Isn't that a good thing?
I'm happy. I mean, all year I was critiqued about who I was. Nobody, the narrative, I don't fit the narrative. I don't fit in the box that y'all want me to be in. I'm too hood, I'm too ghetto. Y'all told me that all year. But when other people do it, y'all don't say nothing. So this was for the girls that look like me, that's gonna speak up on what they believe in. It's unapologetically you. And that's what I did it for tonight. This was for it was just bigger than me tonight. It was bigger than me. Twitter is gonna go in a rage every time. And I mean, I'm happy. I feel like I've helped grow women's basketball this year. I'm super happy and excited. So I'm looking forward to celebrating in the next season.
We're going to go to our right-hand side of in the back.
Gene Wong with the Washington Post. Jasmine, can you take us through your second quarter specifically when you couldn't miss and kind of with the feeling of being that locked in? Then for Alexis, when you see a teammate cooking like that, kind of what's going through your mind?
It was a surreal moment. I mean, every player dreams of being on a big stage like this and, having a game of your life, and for it to, come into fruition, it meant a lot. I was just, taking in the moment. I was just living in the moment. Usually I don't even celebrate after I make a shot, but tonight I just let it all out. I made it 3. I was like, I just had to let it out. I didn't have nothing to lose. It was my senior my last game of my college career, and I ended it. I ended it the right way.
We're gonna go to our left.
I was just super excited for Jazz. As the PG, I always like temperature check my teammates just to see like where they headed. So in practice, I was like, you want to get some extra shots? Because like we usually get extra shots in, just me and her. And yeah, I feel like I can be a trainer someday. So I love like, working with Jazz. But in practice today, I asked her, I said, you want to get some extra shots up? She was like, nah, I'm good. I said, so you ready for tonight? So she hit her first few shots. Iowa called a timeout. I said, stay right there. Stay locked in. Whatever headspace you're in right now, do not check out and just stay ready. And, she gave us a huge spark off the bench today. She was the game changer tonight. And thank you, Jazz, for being a senior and being who you are too. Appreciate you, bro.
We're going to go to our left.
Lauren Moses, Valley Sports. We always hear about what teams learn about themselves at the end of the season. I'm curious what you guys have learned about yourselves as individuals this season.
It don't matter what you go through. It's about the end goal. As a team, we've been through some things. We've been through a lot of things this year. And all season, we were trying to figure out how we were going to piece it together. And no matter what, the biggest goal was to get a national championship. So we put everything else to the side and came together as a team and got to that goal. So just learning each other and just knowing that it doesn't matter about anything else. We got a lot of big personalities on the team. We go at it all the time. But at the end of the day, we love each other and we're sisters. And we got to where we wanted now.
We'll go to our far back on the right-hand side.
Chessa Boucher with WVLA in Baton Rouge.
All
Ladies,
right.
what does it mean for all three of y'all to be?
Let me turn that off. But this is them, of course, their interview afterwards. So, that is what happened. And, you know, like they said, the headspace, your headspace is important. Your headspace is important, very important. You got to have something you are striving for in life. You cannot be, we don't have time to worry or be concerned for others like that. But we do learn. We still have to learn things. But my take on that is, like I said, I always get what I need to get out of everything. The university I went to a Caucasian university. My whole life has been educated by white society, right? White schools, white community, white college, white career, you know. So I learned a lot. And that time of being engaged in that. I don't recommend to reject learning, because everything you can learn from. If we're not getting emotional, we can learn from. A lot of times I've had to sit in my emotions and listen to nonsense. But I guess that's how I learned about being able to be in the present to present myself in such a manner that got me to where I am now, to this point, successfully. So let me change up my screen here. Let me see if I can get something. All right, so I can't find it. Oh, again, it doesn't work. All right, I'm back. I found what I'm looking for. Hold on. Okay, I'm back. Oh, I didn't share it. Nope. So basically, when we think of heaven, we've been told that it's a place, but it's not a place that you're going to go. It's not a place. There's not a heaven or a hell that the white man can put you in as Black people. There's not, I'm going to repeat that. There's not a heaven or a hell that the white man can put you in unless you allow it, unless you want it. You get what you ask for. If you asking for hell, you're going to get hell. Such as allowing yourself to fall for the tricks and the trades of the devil and the devil's society. I talked about how he geared everything for your failure and his benefit. In this society, to where it's going to be people that are going to seem supportive of us, but they're supportive of us because we are the ones who make them not Pinocchio, but become the real boys, become real. We make their world our reality. How do we make our world their reality? We make our world we make their world our reality because we uplift the ideologies that they have given us, that they have placed around us in our world, in this world. So recognize that degeneracy generates degeneracy. They are degenerate people by nature. So all they can give you back is degeneracy. We support the degeneracy whether we like it or not. And the only way for us to not support degeneracy is to stop lifting it up in our minds, our souls, and our bodies, in our lives. When the lady told me, she asked me, did I know that Jesus Christ was my Lord and Savior? I said no, because I don't subscribe to that. So I reject it. Everything's going to be no with me when it comes to that. And I tell you why. Because it's a degenerate concept, a degenerate ideology to keep me bounded in the image and the ways and the thought process of what they have deemed their white supremacy. because I say what they have deemed, because there's two types of white supremacy. There's the outright, all white, alt-white, who were the KKK and businessmen suit. They're no different. So the businessmen suit, they don't outright show racism, right? A lot of us have dealt with that, who've worked in companies, who've done business, and different things like this. And in schools, some schools, right? That soft racism. If you want heaven, heaven is the process of you loving and building you up first. Me taking care of things in my life, making everything great in my world. That is heaven for me. Being able to travel, being able to do great things, being able to live my dreams, the things I want to do in life. That's my heaven in my mind. That should be my heaven in my mind. That's what lifts us high. When we want to do great things, build other people up to do great things as well. Not hinder anybody. You notice I didn't say stop them in their tracks. Don't let them get ahead. Put things in their way to make them stuck. Only we can do, they can't do. You didn't notice I said anything negative. I say lift people up to a higher height. Because if I'm at a higher height, I want the world to be at a higher height with me. Because if I'm the only one at a higher height, then that's an imbalance. That's a bad imbalance, So I like encouraging people to find what you love in life and make that your passion in life. Not to be led or follow a fictitious character and worship a fictitious character and put your life in the hands of a fictitious character who is he's part of something that's going to ultimately decide whether you get to go to greatness. No, you decide that while you're on earth if you're going to go to greatness. Either you're going to go to greatness or you're going to let the devil play upon your life. And, the devil inflicts pain upon people. People turn around and inflict pain upon the other person. And it spreads. But you don't have to be like that. You don't have to live like that. You could let greatness, lead the way. And what's in your heart, what's in your heart, and what's in your mind, what's in that mind. This society puts so much negativity within a person's mind. It's crazy. They want you to be in a state that is not good at all. It's not good at all. If they didn't, they wouldn't put things out here that they put out here. They wouldn't do it if that wasn't their agenda. The agenda is to horrify your world and at the same time have you run to something that only fuels their society. It only fuels their society. It doesn't fuel our society because we're a different mind and we're a different world than what they are in. A totally different world. You know. If we can see our world as clear as the video I have on the screen, far and clear, then I really think that there will be hope, because this is the way our minds should be: peaceful, calm, and serene. And we should make peaceful, calm, serene environments around us. That's heaven. That's heaven. When you don't have this, the opposite, of course, is hell. You know, I am heaven, so I don't need to enter into anything. I just need to ensure that I live to the fullest in my abilities and what I do upon the earth, that I take care of myself. As I always say, health is our wealth. That I love others, that I want to reach my goals in life and still strive for greatness, you know, and greatness for others. Because I don't live on an island alone. And even if I lived on an island alone, that would be just as good, because believe it, I would still have people to come over and get encouragement and uplifting. And it would be an island of adventure and beauty and peace. It would be heaven on earth. That would actually be a place where I could make heaven if I was on the island alone. So I wouldn't be alone for long. I wouldn't be alone for long. You see, it's not a selfish, me thing. And if you go through life a selfish, me thing, which is what I get from white society, they come together when it benefits the group. But as individuals, it's all what they want for themselves. And we can become like that because we've been in the environment of that. And they have made us like that. That's why we're no longer villages. We're no longer team up and help. But although I do give credit, because we got people out here that are actually teaming up and building villages again. We got our people out here actually doing that work. And I'm shouting them out because it is getting done. It's getting done. And it's a great thing. So, you know, I mentioned it's like the lottery, 1 out of 15,000 chances of winning, or getting people to see from a whole different point of view of life, besides the degenerate point of view we've been given, or perspectives we've been given, or experiences we've been given currently. When we do win, it's still a marvelous thing, an outstanding thing, regardless of how much we win. They say if you don't play, you can't win. But that's not true. When you don't play, sometimes it can be a win. When you don't play, sometimes that can be a win. So don't think that you have to play to win anything. What has been built around us is an imbalance. It's to lift up the European and to lower you to degeneracy. And a lot of us have lowered to degeneracy because we think that that's our reality. We really seriously think that we are supposed to be like this because our environment, and we get comfortable in that. Some of us get comfortable in that. And that knowledge that has been given to us. And the little bit of knowledge is what we get from our surrounding, our environment. And if our environment is like that of, without having a mom and a dad, then a lot of times that gives us relationships that end up having issues because we don't have that balance. But not all the time. Not all the time. It depends on what we're learning in that environment. If we're learning to strive for our greatness, then we're not going to fall victim to our environment. We're going to be victored over our environment instead. I love playing the lotto. You win some and you lose some. But it's always great when you win. And all we can really do is take it in stride. Because we're in it to win it. We're in the game to win it, right? So when we lose, all we can do is do better at whatever we were doing the first time and learn to do the process a little bit differently than what we probably did it the first time. Because everything is a learning experience. Everything's a learning experience. Even doing YouTube is a learning experience. I learned so much here. So I'm going to share this video, and I'm probably going to let it play. I'm going to share this video and let that play for a while. Let me get it. But you make your heaven. Now that Jesus was actually a freedom fighter. They even had the Black Panthers back then, right? So he was a freedom fighter. He was a liberator of Black people, believe it or not. And they killed him because they wanted control over the Black people. So they killed him, like they killed all liberators. But this one, they kill all, that they do the same thing. They kill off our liberators, but then they lift them up at the same time. They lift them up for their benefit. They change the story to look like they changed Martin Luther King's story to look like he was benefiting white people. The same with hold on. Yeah, start it over. Same with Jesus. He was the great liberator. And, the story tells you everything you need to know. Agents were there. Agents were there. Hey, Yasina in the house. Welcome. Yeah, I'm going to play this video. I'm going to share this video and let this play. This is some more history, some more insight into the past. I'm going to start saying that because I don't want to say history. Okay? More insight into the past. More insight into the past.
Okay, well, the historical origin of the subject called history begins with the Europeans during the Renaissance era. But you have to know something prior to the Renaissance era. We're talking about during the time of or the middle of the 16th century, which is the Renaissance era, or the second Renaissance era. You have the first Renaissance era, meaning in the 15th century, which is arts and crafts. And then you have the second Renaissance that came about during the time of the 16th century. We're talking about a literary Renaissance era. Okay, but now also you have to factor in the school system that the Europeans was beginning to create in Europe at that time. But then let's progress back a little bit prior to the coming of the European school system. You have to go back to Johannes Gutenberg, who had invented a printing press with movable print in 1437. He had no money to continue to finance his endeavor of operating a printing press, along with the fact that during this time, we're talking about the 15th century, because we're talking about 1437, the Europeans throughout Europe could not read or write. There was no school system for the Europeans. So the only people that really could read or write were people who were associated with the Roman Catholic Church monastery school system at that time, which came about at a later date. So what I'm saying is that during this time of Johannes Gutenberg having no money to continue to operate his printing press, and along with the fact that the people of Europe could not read or write, he had to borrow money from another individual by the name of Johannes Fuss. And he borrowed this money from Johannes Fuss with a high interest rate, which he couldn't pay back. So Johannes Fuss confiscated his printing press, and thus beginning to do printing, etc., etc. Now, the first thing that was printed in 1475 was the Old Testament Bible for the Christian, or for the Christian community. You see, at this time, the Roman Catholic Church was beginning to build in Rome the Vatican by building St. Peter's Church. They began to build St. Peter's Church in 1445. And from that point on, from 1445, which, and 181 years later, they were well on the way of establishing the Vatican with other buildings around St. Peter's Church, which is known today as St. Peter's Basilica. They built it over the catacombs. So the Roman Catholic Church was up and about at that time, and they were the only ones that had a school system, which they trained their priests in and through this school system. Okay, now here comes Johannes Fuss, who had confiscated the printing press from Johannes Gutenberg, who had invented the printing press in 1437. Like I said before, the first thing that was printed was this Hebrew Bible, or the Old Testament Bible, they call it, which is the first 5 books of Moses, the Pentateuch of the Old Testament. They're all one and the same. So this left the Roman Catholic Church without any literature that was pertaining to their object, which is their object is Jesus the Christ. So in 1500, Pope Alexander VI commissioned a man, a playwright at that time by the name of Desiderius Erasmus, to write something on the object of Christianity, which is Jesus the Christ. So now what he did, he took him 16 years to come out with what is known today as a Novum Instrumentum, or the 3 synoptic gospels of Mark, Matthew, and Luke, because they always tell you that John came later, which John did come later. John came out of the King James Version of the Bible of 1611. See, that chapter John was created at that point, you see, by Lancelot Andrews and his group of theologians who created this Bible known as the King James Version with the 4th gospel in it, John. You see, for King James in 1611. Well, let's go back. Now, in the meantime, like I said before, the printing press was being used because the first thing they printed was this Old Testament Bible. And Johannes Fuss, who was a Jew, came about and printed the Old Testament for the Christian community only because, see, the Jewish community had their own literature, which is the Sefer HaTorah and the Talmud. Well, the Talmud really wasn't created then, but they had Sefer HaTorah literature first, which was all handwritten, the Torah, which was used by the rabbis to teach their believers and followers in Orthodox Judaism. But that goes back into another subject. Now, with the printing press, with movable print being used in Europe, being used to print the world's first Bible, or the Old Testament Bible, which was printed in 1475, like I mentioned before, it found Johannes Fuss in a very strange position. The strange position that he was founded in was that the masses of people could not read or write. So you can have a printing press that will print up hundreds of books or thousands of books, but who do you have to read these books? So there was no school system in Europe. The people, like I said before, the masses of people could not read or write. So what the Jews did, they went into the Roman Catholic Church, and they got a man by the name of Martin Luther out of that church. This was in 1517. And they encouraged and financed Martin Luther to go against the Roman Catholic Church to try and get this church to reform. That was called the Reform Movement or the Reformation Movement. Okay, and he in 1517 he nailed 95 reform theses on church door, castle door in Wittenberg, Germany, for the Roman Catholic Church to reform. Okay, now in the meantime, the Jews began to create behind Martin Luther a Protestant school for the Christian community. See, the Protestant Christians. And the Roman Catholic Church countered with that by creating parochial schools for the secular community. Okay, so now this is bringing forth what is known in history as the European Renaissance era. See, now I had to tell you all this in order to answer the question: where did the history or the historical origin of history begin? It began right there in the European school system that they have now began to create. In order to have any type of school system, you have to have a curriculum in the school system. Okay, so therefore, they use the Bible, which was now the Old Testament and the New Testament. They used the Bible as a formula for history. See, the Bible was used. You go back and if you can remember, the Bible was used all the way up into all the way into this country. The Bible was used for the teaching of history. You see, and what they did was that they began to use this Bible to create a curriculum for the foundation of history. And the European is credited today with the historical origin, or the ones that create history by way of using history as a discipline in their school system, or their beginning school system during the Renaissance era. And that's where you will find history first began. And whoever writes history controls history. And the rest of the race of the people did not have a history, or did not have a subject called history. They never wrote a history of themselves. Ancient Egyptians never wrote a history of themselves. And if they did, you can't read it anyway because it's in hieroglyphics, and the hieroglyphics have never been deciphered. And the rest of the race of the people had no alphabet to write with, because ancient Egyptians were the only people on planet Earth that had a writing system. They had three forms of writing: Meta-Neter hieroglyphic, the hieratic-dramatic, and the phonetic alphabet, which is being used today all over the world, that we use today in our own writing system right here in the United States of America. And so during the time of antiquity, the ancient Egyptians were the only ones that had a writing system, because they invented what is known as the alphabet. And the alphabet can only be invented one time. Once it's invented, it cannot be invented anymore. So during the time of antiquity, they were the only people on earth that were a literate people. The rest of the people were illiterate. You see? So therefore, you have to understand that, and understand that this is where, in Europe, as a discipline, history was created for and by the Europeans. So they wrote themselves in history as being the prototype race of people on earth, because they controlled history. And they wrote about the other races of people, the Chinese, the people of India, the ancient Egyptians. They wrote about the Africans, and et cetera, et cetera. So therefore, they can control the subject. And they put it into their school system, in their curriculum, and they began to teach this history, this discipline, from generation to generation to generation until you have it today. No. Was this history accurate? No. How was it falsified? Well, you have to go into each item of history, or each section of history, in order for you to find that out. Okay, what they did, they created a system, and within that system and the discipline of history, they wrote about the people of India. The Indians of India had nothing to do with that history that they wrote about and for the Indians. Okay, but generations and generations has passed, and nobody says anything. They accept the history of India simply because it's now in the school system. Okay, the Indians themselves of India accepts this history. The Chinese the same way. The Africans the same way. The Europeans the same way. You see, so whatever they put in there, they teach this discipline about whatever history they want to attach to whomever they want to attach history to. They continue to teach it from generation to generation. You see, so you have to study the discipline of history and really focus on the discipline of history and what history is all about before you can say, well, okay, this is not true, this is not true, this may be true, but this is not true. And this is what you have to do, but you have to really study that discipline.
Well, one of the ways that you use history to control the minds of people around the world is to put himself into ancient history. I'd like you to explain the role of the Bible in the European manipulation of history, inserting himself where he was.
Well, the Bible, as you know, is a book that is based on allegory, fiction, and mythology. There's nothing in the Bible that is actual facts. I always say that 99 and 9/10 or 99 and 8/10 of every name in the Bible never existed in human form. Okay, so you have a book called the Bible that is false and fictitious literature, and the European have put himself in this Bible because everything in the Bible is European, and he has taken Northeast Africa, which he has renamed the Middle East. And he has taken Northeast Africa. We're talking about Turkey. We're talking about Lebanon. We're talking about Palestine. We're talking about Syria. We're talking about Jordan. We're talking about Iran, Iraq. We're talking about Arabia. We're talking about Yemen, etc. All that's Northeast Africa. He has designated that land over there, that part of Africa, which he has renamed the Middle East, trained the masses of people throughout the world today to identify that land area as the Middle East. He has designated that land area as the land of the Bible. See, so therefore, he has put all of these false, fictitious, non-existent characters in that land area, along with attached stories to these different characters that never existed in human form. This is how he has used the Bible to do that. And like I said before, he began to use this Bible as a discipline to teach history by. See? And people use the Bible as a guideline to call themselves learning a form of world history. That's not a real true world history or a real true form of world history, because history, real history, has 4 ingredients in it. The 4 ingredients are time, people, places, and events. Real time, real people, creating events in certain places throughout the world. See, that's how history is created. Like, for instance, Rosa Parks didn't want to give up her seat one day to a white man on the bus. And everybody knows that story. And she went to jail. They put her in jail. Then here comes Dr. Martin Luther King. And then here comes the Civil Rights Movement. Everybody knows that. So all of that was created by time, people, places, and events. That's history. So that becomes known as real life history. Then you have all these religions, such as Christianity, Islam, Judaism, Buddhism, etc. They all have a pseudo false history attached to each and every one of these religions that they teach to the masses of people throughout the world for them to believe that what they are teaching them coming from this religious literature is true world factual history, and it's not.
Other people that happen in those places. What does that do in terms of robbing Africans of some knowledge of themselves and positioning Europe in the world as a
Well, you have to go back into, like you mentioned, Mesopotamia. That's biblical. Okay. And there's never been a Mesopotamia. Never been a Mesopotamia that ever existed on planet Earth. Mesopotamia is supposed to have started in Iraq. Okay. But there's never been a Mesopotamia starting in Iraq, only in the Bible. That's where you find Mesopotamia, and in the Bible. In Mesopotamia, they try to create a people known as the Sumerians. That's biblical. When you go to the Bible to look up Sumerians, you won't find Sumerians, but you will find its two related names, such as Akkad or Akkadians and Shinar. Those are the two names that you will find in the Bible that relates to the supposed Sumerians. The European scholar community argued all the way up until 1915 the existence of or against the existence of the Sumerians. This is what they had a polemic, an argument among themselves in the European academic community all the way up to 1915. They argued that. You had Joseph Halevi out of France arguing that. You had Charles Renan out of France arguing against the existence of a Sumerian. Never existed. Then, if you read a little further and study the Sumerians, they tell you that the Sumerians left no historical trait of themselves. Okay, that their language cannot be identified with any known language group on Earth today. See, so they can't point to a language or a people speaking a language and say that this is the same language that the Sumerians spoke. So they say there's none that they can identify the Sumerians with any language group on Earth. They said also, if you investigate the Sumerians, they said they cannot identify the Sumerians with any racial group on Earth. That the Sumerians left a picture of themselves. And this picture that they left is that they're going to show you a group of little white men sitting on stools with keen features as long keen noses to identify that the Sumerians or try to imply that the Sumerians were European. But yet and still, they go back. The European academic community up until 1915 argued against the existence of the Sumerians. So you keep that in mind. Very important. See, so you're talking about something that never existed. You're talking about something such as Mesopotamians, Sumerians, Akkadians, Shinarians, all existing only in biblical literature only. That's where you'll find that. So therefore, that's not a real life history. That is a pseudo history created by the Europeans for biblical purposes only. Okay. Now, I think you mentioned something about the ancient Egyptians, where it's what now? No, 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 no. The Europeans created those plaques for the sole purpose of trying to create and prove a Sumerian existence on Earth. How can I prove what? But simply because there was an article that I received from a journal that I subscribed to. And in this journal that I subscribed to, there were two groups of archaeologists arguing between each other. And one group was accusing the archaeology community or archaeologists how they create artifacts and then plant them in the night at a dig. Let's say you're digging over in a certain land area. And late in the night, 2 or 3 o'clock in the morning, they go out there and plant certain artifacts that they want to be found the next day. Okay? So therefore, that's one of the proofs. You see? And then the second proof is this. The argument that the European community had against the Sumerians or against the existence of a Sumerian is very key, is very important to understand. Then another thing that we have to understand, there was a group of Americans coming from the University of Chicago. We're talking about Henry Frankfurt, John A. Wilson, Thurkill Jacobson, and Samuel Noah Kramer. They're the ones that created the continuation of the Sumerians, because that Sumerian argument coming from the European academic community was virtually dead. So they revived it back in 1944, 46, 45, up in that area. And they began to create a pseudo false supposed history with dates, names, etc. for the Mesopotamian time period that they created against the ancient Egyptian chronology that they also created. The Europeans also created the chronology of ancient Egypt. James Henry Breasted, Edward Meyer, that group, etc., etc. But the Europeans had created a chronology of ancient Egypt prior to James Henry Breasted and Edward Meyer's chronology that was created around the time of the turn of the century. They had created a chronology of ancient Egypt way back in the 19th century, middle of the 19th century. See, and the chronology of ancient Egypt is based off of the Bible. And I'll tell our scholars today, our African scholars, you cannot use and do not use the chronology of ancient Egypt as it is being written today. Don't use that, because the ancient Egyptians never wrote a chronology or a history of themselves. It was the Europeans who created that chronology based on the Bible, because the first pharaoh in the chronology of ancient Egypt was Mesram. Mesram is the son of Ham. Ham is the son of Noah. That comes out of the Bible, out of the family and table of nations, etc. Then they're going to say that the Hyksos invaded into Egypt. Okay? There's never been a Hyksos invasion in Egypt. See? So where are they getting this Hyksos information? They're saying that they're getting the Hyksos information coming from Flavius Josephus quoting Manetho or Manetho. There's never been a Manetho. It's supposed to have been a ancient Egyptian priest during the time of Ptolemy II Philadelphia. See, but that goes into another subject. But then when you trace the Hyksos, they say the Hyksos left no records of themselves. You mean to tell me that they're supposed to have occupied ancient Egypt for 208 years and left no records of themselves? They go on to say, if you investigate the Hyksos, that the Hyksos left no culture traits. You mean to tell me that the Hyksos supposedly occupying ancient Egypt for 208 years, left no cultural traits of themselves. Then it goes on to say that the Hyksos sets up Joseph and the Israelites settling in Egypt. So it takes you right back to the Jews, right back to the Bible, etc., etc. So we can't use these different chronologies, you see, because both chronologies, the one of ancient Egypt, which was created by the Europeans, ancient Egyptians, like I said before, never wrote a chronology themselves, and if they did, you can't read it anyway because it's in hieroglyphics, and the hieroglyphics have never been deciphered. Then you have another supposed chronology of, they call it Mesopotamia. Okay, that chronology, like I said before, was created in the 1940s by Henry Frankfurt, John A. Wilson, Thurl Jacobson, and Samuel Noah Kramer, all coming out of the University of Chicago. James Henry Breasted, coming out of the University of Chicago. He created the chronology of ancient Egypt. So you can't use any of that. You have to throw that out. Can't be used. The latter part of the 18th century, heavy in the 19th century. Well, none that I can trace, none that one can trace. Because, see, the Europeans control the literature for the world, okay? And they got interested in Egypt, ancient Egypt, like I said before, in the 18th century. Well, it started a little bit before Napoleon, but it became highlighted even more so and strongly approached after Napoleon made his retreat over there in Egypt. Okay, and in the 19th century, the Europeans really turned the heat up on investigating ancient Egypt. In fact, the University of Chicago, at this very moment that I'm talking to you, they created what is known as a Chicago House. They erected a Chicago House over there, and in that Chicago House, it was put up for the sole purpose of studying ancient Egypt. See, they have everything at their disposal. They have living quarters over there. They have everything at their disposal to study the historical origin or study ancient Egypt.
That's in Chicago.
No, that's over in Egypt.
That's in Egypt. They have a institution
right, called the Chicago House in Egypt to study the ancient Egyptians. They've been over there since 1920.
Now, let me ask you this. Were there other people like Japanese, German, whether outside of the Europeans, were there other nations studying Egypt, going to Egypt, going to study, bringing back artifacts, putting up museums as the Europeans did, that houses primary
Not that I know of. Not that I know of. See, when the Europeans got into the interest of ancient Egypt, then the whole world became aware of it because of their institution.
But they would study, they become aware through primary.
Correct.
Okay. So you're saying that the Europeans control most of the information that went out on ancient Egypt, and they themselves were the ones who were doing
Etc. Correct. That's correct.
What purpose would they have aligning about and establishing a pseudo nation in Babylon? I know you're saying they did it to undergird difficult accusations, difficult writings. But can you explain why
Well, there are different reasons. One is that they wanted to, you got to understand this. The three major Western religions had to get close to ancient Egypt in order for their religion, Christianity, Islam, Judaism, to be real in the minds of the people. All three of those religions are tied into ancient Egypt. Why would they? Simply because ancient Egypt is the only entity of the two, from ancient Egypt and religion. Ancient Egypt is the only one of the two that's real. It's not based on mythology or pseudo paper for stories, so forth and so on. As to religion, religion relies on literature given to the believer of these religions to believe in. So the stories are there in literary form. So you have to know this, that ancient Egypt, of the two entities, are the only one of the two entities that does not need literature to sustain itself. The religions need literature to sustain itself, not ancient Egypt. Because so you can go over there and look at the greatest edifice that has ever been created on earth, which is the Great Pyramid, the Sphinx over there in the desert. All the other monuments are there. The tombs are there. The ones that wasn't pillaged by the Europeans, the artifacts stolen and scattered all over the world, etc. Such as when in 1818, when Belzoni was sent over there by the British Museum to get artifacts out of ancient Egypt by any means necessary. He did his thing over there in doing that, to the tune of 4 floors in the British Museum was filled with ancient Egyptian artifacts. So, getting back to ancient Egypt and the religions. The religions, if you notice, all are close to ancient Egypt. They're tied into ancient Egypt. That's for a reason. Why? Because ancient Egypt is the only thing that's real. The religions, the three major Western religions, Christianity, never been a man ever walked the earth in human form by the name of Jesus Christ, never existed. Islam, there's never been a man that ever walked the earth in human form by the name of a prophet Muhammad. Judaism, there's never been men that ever walked the earth in human form by the name of Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, or Moses. All religions are man-made, pagan, heathen, occult religions based on mythology. That's all religions are. So they had to, in order to make these religions real, they had to get next to something that was real. And ancient Egypt, of the two entities, does not need literature to sustain itself. But the three major religions and all other man-made religions need literature to sustain itself in the minds of the believer. See, and then the second thing is that the Europeans coming into the continent of Africa in Egypt, we're talking about Alexander the Greek in 332 BCE. They're the first known, or he was the first known European historically to come into the continent of Africa in Egypt. Okay, and Alexander the Greek. Okay, not the Great, but the Greek. Don't call any savage who tried to destroy my ancient Egyptian ancestors' culture and civilization great. That's for the Europeans to use that term. I don't. I use Alexander the Greek. All right. Now, Alexander and his successor, Ptolemy I Lagi, called Sotar, who took over the rule of Egypt after the death of Alexander in 323. They became the world's first Egyptians. You see, they were the first Egyptians. You see, so now, well,
there's a difference between an ancient Egyptian and an Egyptian. Okay? An ancient Egyptian, one has to be African to be an ancient Egyptian. An Egyptian could be of anyone of any race, creed, or color, like anyone of any race, creed, or color can be an American today. So an Egyptian, you have to distinguish between an ancient Egyptian and an Egyptian. An ancient Egyptian, you have to be Africans because the ancient Egyptians are Africans. And instead we're Africans, they still are Africans. And so these Greeks became the first Egyptians. Okay? And this is what is being portrayed today in different museums around the world. You go down to the Field Museum in the city of Chicago. They have an exhibit called Inside Egypt. They show you Ptolemaic Egypt. They show you Europeans with hieroglyphic inscriptions on their sarcophagus, with hieroglyphic inscriptions on their paintings, and stelas, etc., using the same pose that our ancient Egyptian ancestors posed for their paintings, for their tombs, for their culture, for their civilization, with hieroglyphic inscriptions around those poles. Okay? And this is what is being portrayed today. When you go into Las Vegas, there's a hotel called the Luxor. There's great big old statues up there with European features. See? So this confuses our people. When they look at things like that, they can't relate themselves racially to identify with ancient Egyptians, because here you got these Europeans out there portraying themselves and emulating the ancient Egyptians, our ancestors. See? So this is what they want. They want to bring this forth. It helps them, see, to give a false illusion to the whole entire world that they were mixed in, or they were the ancient Egyptians, and the ancient Egyptians with their keen features were white or European.
I just want to is what game as the ancient Egyptians, in terms of looking at all that why necessary?
See, the Europeans want to be this very moment, they want to be the prototype race of people on earth. They want to be great. Okay? There's nothing that comes out of Europe that can make the European great. Okay? Nothing. He was illiterate. He had no alphabet. Couldn't write. Couldn't read. Had no institution. So what did Europe offer for the world? Nothing. But a savage. And he's still a savage today. You see? But now here you have the ancient Egyptians who lived in the continent of Africa, in Egypt, who are African people, creating the greatest civilization that has ever existed on planet Earth. Here, the creator, the universal creator, used the ancient Egyptians, our ancestors, as human instruments to bring forth all of creation and civilization for the whole entire world. Everything you see around you came from the culture of the ancient Egyptians. The chair, furniture, eating utensils, reading, writing, the paper, the pens, the ink. They had three forms of writing: the Meta-Neter hieroglyphics, the hieratic, demotic, and the phonetic alphabet. And they were the first ones on earth to create and invent an alphabet. And the alphabet, once it's invented, can only be invented one time. They created mathematics. They created domesticating the earth, domesticating the animals, building brick buildings, living in brick buildings. They had it all the science, everything. Correct? No religion. They had a spiritual way of life, but not a religion. They knew the laws of the universe.
cosmic laws of the universe, and that's what they use, and this is what guided them. So no religion. Religion is all man-made. But here the Europeans, they have nothing. When Alexander the Greek came into Egypt, he was in awe. When he walked into Egypt, he looked around and said, "My gosh, who are these people? How did they create all this great and glorious, harmonious culture and civilization?" The ancient Egyptians were in tune with nature. They were in tune with the cosmic rhythm of the universe. They were in tune with the creator of the universe. See? The ancient Egyptians had no armies and no jails. There was no corruption in ancient Egypt. Every citizen had a home, food, job, education, etc., etc. All treated fairly. The female was treated equal with the male, and so forth and so on. They had a beautiful civilization until the European came in. And that's where it began to get disrupted. See? Because he wanted to be part of that civilization and culture. He wanted himself to be made part of that. And in my book, Historical Origin of Christianity, it will walk you through how this European, after the death of Alexander the Greek in 323, we talk about Ptolemy I Lagiit, how he wanted to get acceptance in our ancient Egyptian ancestors' sacred society. What was rejected. But all that's in my book, Historical Origin of Christianity. Europeans came into Egypt without a fight. They had no fight. Ancient Egyptians didn't have no army. There was no army or jail concept, no place on earth. The only negative disruption of people among each other was in Europe. No, they didn't have armies. They fought each other. They raped their women. They bludgeoned each other. They stole from each other. You see, that's their history.
Yeah, but they had armies.
No, they had to have an army because, see, the rest of the world didn't have an army. You wouldn't
Even against themselves. If they fought each other, they could fight
tribes, but not armies, as we know it today. You see, when the European came into this hemisphere of South and North America, the indigenous South American Indian and the indigenous North American Indian had no armies. They had no concept of fighting because they lived peacefully among each other. Okay, they may have a few little disagreements, but it was not to the point where they want to kill each other. You see? So therefore, there was no armies in South America, North America. Okay? When the Europeans went into Hawaii, there was no army there to keep them out. There was no jail concept there. There was no corruption there. Europeans, when they come in, he brings in corruption and brings in the army and fighting, alcohol, drugs, disease. It goes on and on. You see? So when the European came into Africa, the Africans had no concept of fighting with an army. Like I said before, they may have argued among themselves, disagreed on certain things, but they never fought and killed each other and stole from each other where they had to put people in jail. They had no concept of that. See, that's a European entity. See, like when Europeans came over in this hemisphere, he was welcome. When he came in Hawaii, he was welcome. In 2 BC, the Chinese built the Great Wall of China to keep the European out. But they had no army or jails over in China. The Indians of India, he went over in India. And you see, even during our time, That was Mahatma Gandhi. You remember Mahatma Gandhi? He went over and took India. India had no army to keep him out. You see that? And you just walk in and take over. See? Non-civilization. It's an illusion because they have built themselves a non-civilization and a pseudo-culture off of mythology. Okay? Now, what they did was this. They came into ancient Egypt and they destroyed the institution of our ancestors, the ancient Egyptians, down to its foundation. As you know, every building that you see erected on earth has a foundation to it. But you can't see that foundation, but you can see the building. So they took our ancestors' institutions and destroyed them down to its foundation. They used that foundation to try to build themselves an institution off. But they built themselves an institution off of lies, deceit, murder, injustice, corruption, slavery, exploitation, religion, mythology, and perverted scholarship. This is what they built themselves an institution off of. So if you take all that together, and you will find that in essence, what they created was illusion. Okay? Because when you tell lies about things, then you're setting up and then teach these lies as true, then you're setting up an illusion in the mass populace of the world, the people of the world. Like, for instance, the Europeans will teach you that there was a Socrates. There's never been a Socrates. Socrates was supposed to have been the teacher of Plato. It's never been a Plato. Plato was supposed to have been a teacher of Aristotle. It's never been an Aristotle. Aristotle was supposed to be a teacher of Alexander the Greek. That he wrote so many hundreds of books. And that Alexander built a library called the Great Library for an Aristotle. It's never been an Aristotle. Now, in my book, The Historical Origin of Christianity, I tell you who built what is known as the Great Library of Egypt and why they call it the Great Library of Egypt. Okay, it's all in my book, The Historical Origin of Christianity. So then they tell you that was Herodotus. Never been a Herodotus. They say that the Herodotus is supposed to be the father of history for them, for the Europeans. Never been a Herodotus. Then they tell you that their history, the Europeans' history, started with the Iliad and Odyssey written by Homer, 9th century Homer. Never been a Homer. See? So the Iliad and the Odyssey and Homer is all based on mythology, something that never existed. They tell you about Euripides. Never been a Euripides. Never been a Hippocrates or Hippocrates. See, so these people who are going to medical school and getting their degree, when they graduate, they have to take a Hippocratic oath. It's never been a Hippocrates or Hippocrates, etc. You see, that's all based off of an illusion. So when you tell lies, it becomes an illusion. If you teach the lie from generation to generation, it becomes an illusion in an individual's mind because they take the untruth that was taught to them to be true.
Let's just deal with Plato, Aristotle, and so forth.
Correct.
Can you give any proof to that?
Yes. The question that Walter Williams asked, if an individual insisted, well, Walter Williams, you're wrong. There was a Socrates, a Plato, and Aristotle, Herodotus, and Homer, etc., etc., Solon, and so forth and so on. All these Greek names that I just called, supposed to have existed prior to Alexander the Greek coming into Egypt in 332 BCE. My question, Walter Williams' question, has to be asked. What alphabet did these Greek names use? Because the Greeks had no alphabet. They had no alphabet.
prior to Alexander the Greek coming into Egypt in 332 BCE. Alexander forced the Greek language on our ancient Egyptian African ancestors. And our ancient Egyptian African ancestors, being a literate people, the only people on earth that were literate, they invented 3 forms of writing that I have previously mentioned. They applied one of their alphabets or alphabets to the Greek language, which is the phonetic alphabet, misnomer today and called a Phoenician alphabet. It's never been no Phoenician to have an alphabet. That's all biblical also. Okay? And so the Greeks never had an alphabet, but it was the Greek language that the ancient Egyptians applied an alphabet to. And today, the Europeans are claiming that alphabet that our ancient Egyptian ancestors applied to the Greek language. They're saying that's the Greek alphabet. Greeks never had an alphabet. There's never been an institution that has ever come out of Greece during the time of antiquity. So name one. Nothing. No, how can you write with what? What are you going to write with? Air? No. The ancient Egyptians did not take any foreigners in their sacred society. Those were their institution of learning. They didn't take any foreigners in there, nor did they race mix during the time of antiquity. They handpicked their own African kind to study in their sacred institution. And it would never be an uncivilized, savage European Greek who could not read or write. They wouldn't run in no kindergarten over there. They would have to teach this European just basic reading and writing, alphabet. So they didn't accept any foreigners in their sacred society. No, the answer would be no.
Let's go back to the beginning of our history, the Bible, and try to look at, unravel how that is the case. When was the Bible written in terms of its antiquity and its fictitiousness? Can we get into some of that?
Yes, first place, the Bible. Let's say the Old Testament and the New Testament, or the Holy Bible, which contains the Old and New Testament under one cover. That Bible is strictly for the Christian community of the world.
Before you I just want to ask you, did the Greeks leave? Is there any literature in any form that the Greeks left or that the Romans left actually authentic writing by them that talks about what they did in their life before
No, you cannot. These people were illiterate. They had no alphabet to write with to leave a record of that. And then you have to realize, Clemson, that these people are constantly fighting and taking and bludgeoning and murdering and raping and robbing and stealing and lying and cheating. You cannot have no academic community coming out of that type of environment, especially with one not having the alphabet or an institution to sustain their writing. What institution that they created that would, if they wrote anything, that would sustain it? There's none. You can't. You got to name an institution that they created and used during their time. Then you can say maybe there was writing left in that institution or created by that institution. They had no institution. You have to have an institution. That's not true. That's not true, because when Ptolemy I Lagi, the successor of Alexander the Greek, who died, Alexander died in 323, Ptolemy took over the rule of
Egypt in 323. He tried to get himself admitted in and accepted in the ancient Egyptian sacred society, the same as did Alexander the Greek. Okay? But he was rejected. They didn't take any foreigners in their society. So Ptolemy I Lagi, called Sotar, the word S-O-T-R means savior, came up with a bright idea of saying, if I can find a temple in Egypt that will accept my image and make my image into a god, and after making my image into a god, place that image into the sacred temples throughout Egypt to be worshipped right along with the deity of the ancient Egyptians, Osiris. Okay. Now, he found a temple in Memphis, Egypt to do just that. Okay? And they, in Memphis, Egypt, the priests and priestess took two of their deities, Osiris and Apis, and made a composite of the two deities, and they came out with a name of Osiris or Serapis. And they gave that name to Ptolemy I Lagi, called Sotar. You see? And this is all in my book, The Historical Origin of Christianity. And they, Ptolemy I began to go around to these various sacred temples throughout Egypt, offering his image to be inserted in their sacred society, and he was rejected. So what he did, he closed down all of those institutions. You see? And in the meantime, the Greeks still could not read or write, and the Greeks and the Romans are one and the same race. Okay, so I want to bring that up. And so therefore, there was no institutions. It had been closed down. So whatever the Greeks learned from the ancient Egyptians, the point I'm trying to make, that whatever they learned was not sustained by way of generation to generation, by way of an institution. You have to have an institution to sustain knowledge, because that knowledge that you want to sustain has to be housed in an institution to be taught to the future generations that's coming before you. You see, and those institutions were closed down. So what the Greek or the Roman learned from the ancient Egyptian, it died with that individual when he died, until the Hagia Sophia was built by Justinian and his wife Theodora in 532. Justinian and his wife built the world's first Christian church, called the Hagia Sophia, in Constantinople, Turkey. Okay, that's the world's first Christian church. 5 years later, in 537, they had finished that church, an institution, and university. The teaching staff at the Hagia Sophia were made up of African, Melkite, Coptic Egyptians. They were your faculty. They're the ones that taught the Europeans. That's where the Europeans first began to be taught anything about civilization and what is needed to sustain themselves by way of having and accepting a process of learning. Okay? That's where it began at the Hagia Sophia. So it didn't begin during the time of antiquity. Like George M. James in his Stolen Legacy said that the Greeks studied with the ancient Egyptians. No, they didn't. Okay? They studied, the Greeks and the Romans and the Europeans began to study at the Hagia Sophia. And you have to have an institution to disseminate knowledge from that can be disseminated and sustained from generation to generation. Prior to the Hagia Sophia, the world's first Christian church, built by Justinian and his wife in 532, finished in 537, the Europeans had no institution.
But during the time of Roman occupation, wasn't there intermarriage? I mean, the Romans brought
make North Africa their seat of power. They remain there. They enjoy having people that remain in North Africa. Were they the Melkite, Coptic, Egyptian? There are a lot of Romans coming to mix and marry, and what impact did the Egyptians that were in North Africa have on the Roman Empire? Were they black popes, black emperors?
No, no. Rome did not have a church. You got to remember now. The first, well, that's
political.
but you mentioned Pope.
Yes.
Okay, so you had to have a church to have a Pope.
Yes, that's true.
Okay, so there was no Pope in Europe. Now, let's get back to the first question. When Alexander came into Egypt with his entourage, thereafter, talking about 332 BCE, after that, when other Europeans coming out of southern Europe and southern Russia began to come in there in droves. They came and settled all along North Africa, Libya, Tunisia, Algeria, Morocco, Mauritania, etc., etc. Okay, they began to settle in Turkey, which is northeast Africa. They call it, and renamed it today, the Middle East. They began to come out of southern Russia and settle in what is known as Iran, what is known as Iraq, what is known as Saudi Arabia, etc., etc. All those land areas that I mentioned were occupied by indigenous Africans. They began to come in and push those Africans out. So there was a large influx of Europeans coming in to the continent of Africa after Alexander came to Egypt. Okay? And they began to, of course, they began to force themselves on African women. Okay? And yes, they did intermix with each other at that point only, see, by way of force. That's what you have to understand. Now, what was your other question?
No, I was asking because there were descendants of Africans who made up the Roman army. Italians were all Africans. They talk about the one that went to Britain, African, Italian, to German.
What year? Well, that's debatable. That's an area that you really have to investigate and have to really know what you're talking about, and you really got to study it by way of focusing in on that time period. Study that time period. You said 200 ABCE. I don't use AD because there's never been Jesus Christ to use AD after the death of our Lord or Anno Dominus. I use ABC. There's also the historical origin of Christianity. But you have to study that area, that time which you're talking about, to really get an understanding before anything can be said about that area. But like I mentioned to you before, there was no popes. You got to see, there was no popes, no African popes in Europe or in Rome, because Rome did not have the seat of Christianity. The seat of Christianity was in Africa, in the Hagia Sophia. You don't get the seat of Christianity was transferred out of Africa in the 15th century. Yes, sir, into Europe. Like I mentioned to you before, they began to first build St. Peter's Church, known today as St. Peter's Basilica, in 1445. That's the 15th century. And it took them 181 years, in 1626, to build what is known as Vatican City. Okay? And they built St. Peter's Church, called Basilica today, over the catacombs. All the Vatican is built over the catacombs anyway. But they wanted to build over the catacombs for a reason. Because by them building St. Peter's Church over the catacombs, they're saying that we are building this church over the tomb of Peter. See, because the Pope today gets his authority as the vicar of Christ from supposed Peter. See, Peter supposed to have told, Christ was supposed to have told Peter to build my church on this rock, etc., etc. You know, that's all tradition. So that's the reason why they created St. Peter's Church and built St. Peter's Church over the catacombs, supposedly over the tomb of Peter. Then you got to go back to find out about a Peter. Go back to the time when they said that Rome was burning, or Rome burned in 67. They used the term AD. When Nero played his violin while Rome burned. You heard that story, yes. And one of his aides came to Nero and said, the reason why Rome is burning is because the Christians set it on fire. And he ordered his army general to go and get Peter and Paul. This is all traditional religious Christian story. To get Peter and Paul, and they took Peter and Paul into the circus area or the arena where they held different, supposedly different events. And they took Peter and Paul and they tied them up by their feet and let them hang upside down until the blood rushed to their head and eventually killed them. And then the Christians supposed to have come into the arena and cut Peter and Paul down and took them down in the catacombs and buried them. So now the Roman Catholic Church building St. Peter's Basilica over the catacombs, over the supposed tomb of Peter. There's never been a Peter. There was never been a Christ. And we talk about first century, 67 is first century. There was never a Christ, Christianity, or a Christian church in the first century. You don't get a Christ until the 5th century at the Council of Ephesus. Read my book, The Historical Origin of Christianity, will tell you that. You don't get Christianity coming about for the very first time in history until the close of the Council of Chalcedon, 451. You don't get a Christian church until Justinian and his wife Theodora builds a Christian church in 532. Finish it in 537. You see? So therefore, in the first century, there was no Christ, no Christianity, and no Christian church, and no religion called Christianity. See? So that's all false and fictitious stories that's put into traditional Christian teaching.
On that whole and how Romans were active in North Africa. You're saying that there was no Christianity, etc. Then basically their morals, their values, and their worldview would have been the same as barbarians they were when they came in. So you would have had the Egyptians, the ancient Egyptians, still trying to maintain a spiritual system of life. But what I'd like to ask you is the majority of the ancient Egyptians, if they remained in North Africa, what was, as far as the studies go, interrelationship between those Romans and those ancient Egyptians? Did they move south? What happened to them?
They were pushed south. Yeah, the ones that didn't want, unable to stay, they went south into Africa, went south into Africa. And then the influx of Europeans kept coming in. See, So today you look over there, you see nothing but European faces under the name of Arab. And you see very few indigenous Africans over there.
There had to be a lot of killing, like here for the first
Right. See, anywhere Europeans go, they bring death and destruction and disease and ignorance with them. Everywhere they go. See, our ancient Egyptian ancestors civilized this whole entire world. The Europeans terrorized this whole entire world, including themselves in Europe. They're at this very moment terrorizing themselves right now in Europe, Kosovo, and other parts of Europe. At this very moment.
Okay, I want to move about. I just want to ask you one of the questions when I think about one address. But in terms of the spiritual system of the Egyptians that the ancient Egyptians had, they were able to maintain that to a certain degree. You say Lagi Sola, one of the ancient Egyptian gods, long, and you got a Melchite Coptic.
Not a church, but a sacred society, yeah.
Now, how was this accepted by the Romans themselves? They began to follow or worship, or how does that work?
Well, see, every Greek, starting with every Greek author told me one like you, whose image was used and given the name Serapis, whose image is still used today and given the name Christ. Every Ptolemaic ruler and Roman ruler, after Ptolemy one Lagi called Sotar, they sat on the throne and ruled Egypt as the vicar of Serapis. So they, the Greeks and the Romans, began to worship Serapis and Isis, one of the ancient Egyptian female deities in the ancient Egyptian divine triad of Osiris the father, Isis the holy Hathor cow mother, and Horus Jr., the S-U-N of that triad. You see? So this Serapis, which is a European white man that is known back then during the time as Serapis, known today as Jesus the Christ, was always matched with Isis. So the African female, Isis. Okay, and that's what the Greeks and the Romans first began to worship. Okay? Now, another thing you said about supposed black popes of Rome. That's not true. Let me go back to that. You see, Constantine gave Sylvester I, this is in my book, I advise an individual to buy my book, Historical Origin of Christianity, to really understand what I'm talking about, because I lay it out in a progressive progression. Okay, and after the donation of Constantine was given to Sylvester I by one Constantine and accepted by Sylvester I, the donation of Constantine goes like this. If Sylvester accepted the donation of Constantine, he was given Constantine's imperial power and authority over the Coptic Egyptian community. Now, that community accepted from, oh yes, and the Greeks too. Okay? And what he wanted after
Sylvester accepted the donation of Constantine was to be baptized in that community and made part of it. But he had no authority over that community. So in essence, he was given making Sylvester the HNIC, correct, of the Coptic Egyptians, in charge of the Coptic Egyptians only, on a temporal basis, provided that Sylvester could get the rest of the Coptic Egyptians to worship this European image, then known as Serapis, now known today as Jesus the Christ. It's all in my book.
Coptic was different from what Romans were worshiping through worshiping Serapis and Isaac, that they were not mixing in terms of Coptic spiritualism and the European system that they were using.
Good.
What was the difference?
Yeah, the Coptic Egyptians, they continued to pay homage to their ancestors in that ancient Egyptian divine triad of Osiris, the father, Isis, the holy Hathor cow mother, and Horus Jr., the Sun. That's what they paid homage to. Whereby the Greeks worship this Serapis that we know today as Jesus Christ, along with Isis. Okay?
What would be unusual?
I just got to explain it to you the difference.
Yeah, but I mean, in values, in morals, worldview,
The answer is the same. Physical form, not spiritual form. See, the ancient Egyptians had a spiritual connection to their ancestors that made up the ancient Egyptian divine triad. That was a spiritual connection there. That's their ancestors. That's something in reality to them. The Greeks and the Romans worship Serapis, which is man-made, the created creature, and Isis, the only deity of the two that were real, but not real to the Greeks and the Romans because they had no spiritual connection to Isis. See, they had no spiritual connection to Serapis, just a physical connection only. See, there's a difference between a physical being and a spiritual being. And the ancient Egyptians were a spiritual body, whereby the Greeks was a physical body. That's your difference. And see, getting back to like J.A. Rogers put in our community, 100 known facts about the Negro, about these so-called black popes. That's misinformation. Okay. Getting back to the donation of Constantine, the ecclesiastical authority, by way of the donation of Constantine, is now in the hands of the Melkite Coptic African Egyptian. Okay, that was given to Sylvester I in 313 and 314 in that time. Okay. Let's skip in time and go up to 553 at the Council of Constantinople II, which was called by Justinian. That prior to that calling of the Council of Constantinople II, 553, he and his wife had built the Hagia Sophia, like I mentioned, in 532, finished in 537. Now he wanted to be the head of that church. He couldn't be the head of that church because of the donation of Constantine. See? Because ecclesiastical authority was in the hands of the Melkite African Egyptian. See? So an African advisor by the name of Theodore Acitus told him how to take back the donation of Constantine. It's all in my book. And so his advice to Justinian was to try to get Vigilius to take up a communion with the Monophysites. The Monophysites, you have to understand about the Monophysites, that's all in my book too, in order for you to understand the historical origin of Christianity. Now, when the Hagia Sophia was built and finished, 537, a man by the name of Agapetus I, a Coptic Egyptian, had the donation of Constantine or ecclesiastical authority. And what happened to Agapetus I, who was an African, he died a mysterious death. That means that Justinian had him killed. Then his successor was Silvius I. And Theodora had her army general and his wife to serve treason papers on Silvius. And they got rid of him, disposed of him. Then the next Coptic Egyptian, Melkite Coptic Egyptian, to hold the ecclesiastical authority by way of the donation of Constantine was one Vigilius. And this is where Theodore Acitus advised Justinian how to get and take away the donation of Constantine. You see? Now, this is what he told him to do. He told him to get him to denounce the 3 chapters. See, what I'm saying is technical, but it's in my book. And it's also into encyclopedias and other books of that nature. You see, but the 3 chapters was used in the Council of Chalcedon of 451 against Nestorius. That's in my book too. But that's technical. You have to read the book in order for you to really understand what I'm talking about. Now, at this moment, like I said before, the donation of Constantine, or the authority of ecclesiastical power and authority, was now in the hands of one African, Vigilius, and Justinian wanted that authority. So Theodore Acitus, his African lawyer and advisor, told him 2 things to do. So you get Vigilius to denounce the 3 chapters. 3 chapters, like I said before, was used at the Council of Chalcedon against Nestorius, who said that the created creature, the Virgin Mary, is the created title of Theotokos. The Theotokos means the mother of God. And God meaning Serapis at the time, who was going to become Christ. Nestorius would not accept that title, but that you have to read that in my book, which explains that. Now, he wanted Vigilius to denounce the 3 chapters. 3 chapters written by 3 African bishops, Theodoret, and Ibis of Odessa. Okay. And the second thing he advised Justinian to get Vigilius to do was to take up communion with the Monophysites. See? That really went against the grain of Vigilius, because Vigilius was a diaphysitic Christian. Diaphysitic Christian is an individual who believes in the 2 natures of Christ, one spiritual and one human, whereby a monophysite only believes in the one nature of Christ, spiritual but no human nature. That's monophysitic teachings and doctrine. Okay. So Vigilius refused to do either of the 2. And he was hound and chased until they killed him. And at the Council of Constantinople II, Justinian took back the donation of Constantine, and now
he had ecclesiastical authority in his power over the Church of the Hagia Sophia, or the Church of the Holy Wisdom, which is another name for Jesus Christ. He also had political authority as being the Byzantine emperor. Now, as ecclesiastical, or with this ecclesiastical authority, he was able to appoint bishops of the Hagia Sophia by way of appointing patriarchs. And a patriarch is nothing but a bishop. Okay? Now, the Hagia Sophia represented the churches, other churches that was being built in Europe, in Rome, in France, in Germany, etc., etc. See, but the first church outside of Africa was built in Rome, Italy. See, so but the patriarch of the Hagia Sophia was the patriarch of the Western churches. See, and all those patriarchs of the Hagia Sophia were African men. See, so a patriarch is nothing but a bishop. See, so the patriarch of the Hagia Sophia, being an African bishop, was also the Bishop of Rome. See, that's where a lot of you historians get mixed up. Now, also, the Byzantine rulers also picked the Patriarch of Constantinople. Now, what is the Patriarch of Constantinople? The Patriarch of Constantinople is a bishop also, but he is the Patriarch and Bishop of the Monophysites, because you still had those two factions arguing with each other. The Diophysitic Christians, like I explained to you, believing that Christ, no, two natures, spiritual and human. The Monophysites said only one nature, spiritual, Osiris-like spirit, but no human nature. See, so they had a polemic going there. You see, so all of your Byzantine rulers picked the patriarch of the Hagia Sophia, which represented the European churches. See, and they became the Bishop of Rome. Then they also, the Byzantine rulers, picked the patriarch of Constantinople that represented the Monophysite community. But both bishops, both patriarchs, had offices in the same building, the Hagia Sophia. It's like you have in Washington, D.C., in the Capitol, you have both political parties having offices in the White House, the Democrats and the Republicans. It's the same thing. Byzantine. The Byzantine rule, or Roman rule, is designated for Africa, or they call it the East, okay, as opposed to the West, which is Europe. Now, Constantine went into Turkey, an area called Byzantium, in 324. He changed that name Byzantium, the little city in Turkey. He changed that to be called Constantinople. Today it's called Istanbul, Turkey. But then it was Byzantium. He changed it, named it after himself, and called it Constantinople. Okay? And they built a double wall city, or a double wall around the city. And that was the seat, or the capital, of the Byzantine Empire in the East, or in Africa. See? So this is in 324. But the Byzantine Empire did not start until 395. beginning of the Byzantine Empire, 395. And it lasted all the way up until 1453, when Muhammad II penetrated the double-walled city of Constantinople and seized the Hagia Sophia. By that time, they had transferred the seat of Christianity out of Africa, out of the Hagia Sophia, out of Constantinople into Europe, like I mentioned to you before, into Rome, on the outskirts of Rome, over the catacombs. They began to build St. Peter's Church. So the Byzantine Empire officially began in 395, and it ended in 1453. Yeah, well, see, the territory was parts of Africa, especially northeast Africa and North Africa along the Mediterranean, and parts of Europe, parts of southern Europe, and parts of Russia. See, that all encompassed the Byzantine Empire. Different men from time to time. But you had so many Byzantine emperors through history. In my book, I'm writing my second book called The Historical Origin of Islam. Saying there's no Prophet Muhammad. And what I did, like in my first book, to write the historical origin of Christianity, I had to follow Serapis all through history to get to the time when this Serapis image that we know today as Jesus Christ was transformed into the Christ. I had to follow Byzantine history from 319 all the way up to 1453 to get the understanding about no Prophet Muhammad, how that all came about. Yes. Yes, absolutely.
So Rome really fall. When did Rome fall?
Rome actually never fell. And fall per se, someone else took over. They were always being invaded and penetrated, etc., etc. Even in 800 ACE, Empress Irene had appointed Charlemagne to take over the rule of Rome, because Rome was under the Byzantine Empire. She was, as empress, she was a Byzantine empress. So Rome was always being invaded by people coming out of southern Europe, etc., etc. Italy, which is where Rome is at, Italy. So it was always a constant invasion, but Rome itself never fell. Okay, maybe the Roman power was weakened, but then you had the Byzantine power, which is connected to what we call Roman power. The Byzantine Empire and Constantinople were called the New Rome, known as New Rome in history. You're speaking. Are you speaking of Moors? Are you speaking of Moors? Okay.
Because you have really begin teach and
The Europeans.
Yeah, the Europeans. Now they spread how far over?
Well, see, you have two factions of Moors. First, you got to know the meaning of the name Moor. The word Moor is only a name given to two groups. One, the Saracen Moors, which are Arabs. What makes a Moor is an individual who comes from Morocco, in North Africa, and Mauritania,
in North Africa, crossing the Mediterranean, going into Spain. Okay? And it said that these Arab Saracen Moors in 711 crossed out of Morocco and Mauritania, crossed the Mediterranean, going into Spain to invade the Spaniards, who were Christians. They're calling these Arab Moors, they're calling them Muslims. There was no Islam in the 8th century. There's no Islam or no Mohammedanism. The book will bring that out, the so-called Islam. But there was monophysite. They were monophysites. The people who believed in the one nature of Christ as being spiritual nature but no human nature. But they was penetrating over there. They came over there with destruction. Everywhere Europeans go, they don't bring harmony, they bring death, destruction, and disease. So this is what they brought over there. That's in 711. Then you have the real Moors of the Africans. They came into Spain in 1051. See, but they were the Coptic Egyptian Africans with a high civilization. They got this high civilization as a continuance coming from the ancient Egyptian ancestors, the ancient Egyptians. They were your mathematicians. They were your scientists. They were your builders. They were everything that we know today as being a civilized person. They had it. They crossed over from Morocco and other parts of Africa into Spain. But they came over into Spain and they built up those great cities that we know today as Seville, Cordova, and Granada, etc. They brought all that in. They brought a high civilization into Spain. Everywhere African people go, I'm talking about the ancient Egyptians, everywhere they went, they brought a high civilization to whomever they came in contact. Spain was no exception. I want to go back to unless you want to just change it. I want to change the subject a little bit now. But I want to ask you about the monetary system. Well, you said monetary system that we have today. You have to go back to the time the Europeans were using precious metal and jewelry as something of value. Precious metal means gold and silver. Jewelry means gems, diamonds, rubies, and you name it. That was your monetary system at that time. Okay. Until the Lombards came into being. The Lombards came out of Germany to the north of France, to the north of Italy. Came out of Germany, north of Italy, and they began to overrun, take over Italy, etc., to the point where they control all the natural resources in Italy, they control the commerce of Italy, and they control the land. Italy became land barons, and etc., etc. And they created what is known as the feudal system, so forth. And so I was taking you through fast-paced, supposed history of how money that we know today is paper money first came into existence. But it's
monetary system was under the control of whoever owned precious metal and jewelry, jewels, etc. So you have the Lombards coming in 543 out of Germany into the north of Italy. The group, and they created what is known as dukes. And those dukes constituted families, their own personal families. They were thugs, vandals. They would do anything to gain something of value, physical value, material value, etc., etc. And in the beginning of the 13th century, 1202, long story short, they created what is known as paper money by creating paper money with the usury tax, the interest tax. They changed the monetary system for the whole entire world. Y'all see those kings and things were really treating them unfair. They were confiscating their land. They were putting heavy taxes on them, so forth and so on. So what they did to the king is that they changed the monetary system by creating paper money. Now, the king is sitting up there with precious metal, gold and silver, and jewelry. So they created a system using paper money. And they began to open and create banks using this paper money, issuing this paper money with an interest rate. They were already rich people anyway. They created a system. If you can create a system and have people to initiate that system, to sustain that system, then you can initiate a change. See? In other words, it's like the typewriter is obsolete today. You have the computer. So whoever created the computer made the typewriter obsolete. See? So they just came up with this idea of having paper money instead of coin money, gold and silver. See? Came up with this idea of allowing you this paper money at a interest. But you put up a collateral. The collateral will be your jewelry. You see that? And or either certain gold coins, because now the gold coins that you have really has no value as this paper money, because they have put a high value on this paper money. So you put up your jewelry to get a loan of this paper money. And they began to open up their first bank in the north of Italy. The second bank, they went into the south of France. And that's how the banking system using paper money began. And from that point, they began to expand that monetary system, because now they control the printing press that prints the legal money. See? And that's how it began. So far as money is concerned, paper money is concerned. Correct. Well, see, that's a tricky question. You see, a Jew means, did they practice the religion of Judaism?
That's the question. That constitutes a person being a Jew. If you practice a religion called Judaism, then you're a Jew. If you practice a religion called Christianity, then you're a Christian. If you practice a religion called Islam, then you're a Muslim, and so forth and so on. So that's a tricky question. The Rockefeller family married into the Rothschild family. The Rockefeller family are not Jews. They're Baptist Christian by way of religion. In order to be a Jew, you have to embrace a religion called Judaism. All capitalists who are capitalists today does not practice Judaism. Some of them are atheists. So some of them practice other religions, but not Judaism. So I don't get the impression that since this person is strictly dealing in a capital community, that he has to be a Jew. So I want to clear that up. Well, the impact is very strong. I mentioned paper money, the usury tax started with the Lombards, right? They're still operating today in London, England, on a street called Lombard Street. That's where all your banking houses are. You see? Rothschilds, the House of Rothschild, Solomon Brothers, Brown Brothers. And they have an insignia of the three balls. You go to a pawn shop today, you see three balls hanging out there. Those three balls represent buy, sell, and lend. Now, that banking institution on Lombard Street in 1913 set up the Federal Reserve in this country. I was saying the Warburg brothers over here to set up the Federal Reserve in 1913. Today, you have the Federal Reserve. They also set up the IMF and the World Bank, the International Monetary Fund. See, they control that. They own the World Bank. They own IMF. They own the Federal Reserve of the United States of America. It's owned by the Federal Reserve. All your congressmen, senators, the president, everybody. This whole country is owned by the Federal Reserve. The United States government borrows money from the Federal Reserve. And if they're broke, or if an individual is broke, where do they go to get their money from? The Federal Reserve. Okay. Who owns the printing press to print the money that loans the United States government money coming from the Federal Reserve? The Federal Reserve. They own the printing press that prints the money. So whoever owns the printing press got the power. Yes, sir, definitely. The Lombards they own the Federal Reserve and the printing press. They own IMF. They own the World Bank. And that's how they control the whole entire world today under one world order. It's called one world order. Whoever owns the printing press owns the whole entire world. year later, 1 American was 45,000. So had he taken away the freedom, he would have lost. What impact is the IMF president World Bank have on countries around where they say
Well, the IMF and the monetary controllers and rulers of the monetary system for the world, like I told you, comes out of Lombard Street in England. They go around the country, go around the world, and they create countries, developed countries, to be poor. They set up a country, make sure that country is poor, like Mexico, poor. That was done on purpose. On purpose. They shut them out. They value their money. The money on the world monetary market is very low. See? Cut out certain industries over there. See? This is part of how they exploit people. They create poverty for you in order for you to ask them for money. You see? And when you go and ask them for money, the IMF, the first thing they tell you that you have to devalue your money. In other words, your money is no more good anymore. It's worthless. You have to declare that your money is worthless. Once you do that, then we, the IMF, will loan you money. Okay? Now, along with the IMF loaning you money, there are certain stipulations, meaning that an individual country who borrows money from the IMF has to agree to allow private investors to come into their country and invest in their country by any means necessary as the investors see fit to do. And that officials of that country or the citizens of that country cannot complain or object to what these private investors are doing in their country. If they do, then they will have to suffer the consequences. That's the stipulation. And once you get hooked into that loan, you will forever, that country will be forever in debt or indebted to the IMF. So it's an endless process that they create. They create the money system. They create whose currency is devalued, whose currency is worth this, and they bring it up and down, and down. They control that. Why? Because they control the printing press that prints the money. Whoever controls the printing press that prints the money got the power. Because if you and I had a printing press in our basement to print money, we would never be broke. Correct. Correct. Absolutely. That's what these demonstrations are being done today. You know, they was in Washington demonstrating against the IMF. You know, they were in, I believe, in California demonstrating against the IMF. And so forth and so on. So there are demonstrations against the IMF being broken out all over the world now. Different places. They're protesting against the one world order. Starting with the Lombards, beginning of the 13th century, when they create paper money in the banking system with interest or usury.
Now, I want to go back to that Bible and looking at, not the Bible itself, but looking at the printing press. And when they use the Bible, now, we had said that places like Solomon, all of these places in the Bible these places had to be created to substantiate or validate the Bible or the story. So can you talk about that? Those places are only mentioned and told about in the Bible. Those are biblical stories based on true lives. Those stories are coming out of the Old Testament. The Old Testament comes from a religion called Judaism. Okay. So you're going to get all of these pseudo-biblical stories, false and fictitious stories, coming out of the religion called Judaism. That's where it's coming from. The Persians, Mesopotamia, Sumerians, the Hyksos. It goes on and on. All Noah and his ark, the flood story, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, Moses, Ham, Shem, and Japheth. All that comes from the religion called Judaism via the Bible, stories told in the Bible. See, that's all pseudo-pigraphic literature. Now, they teach you, the world masses that of the three major Western religions, Judaism is first. And then they teach you from Judaism came Christianity because they tell you that Jesus Christ was a Jew. And from Judaism and Christianity came Islam, historically incorrect. The world's first man-made religion was Christianity. The second one was Monophysitism. That became Mohammedanism. Mohammedanism became Islam in 1919 when they created the Quran for the very first time. The Quran was formulated in 1870 in Syria, finished 49 years later, and accepted by the Mohammedan world in 1919 in Cairo, Egypt. Okay. Now, getting back to Judaism. Judaism was created by one Solomon Bar Isaac called Rashid between 1180 and 1200. So between late 11th and early 12th century. That's when Judaism came about. Judaism cannot predate one Rashid. Judaism as a religion cannot predate the first crusade of 1096. Can't do it. There's no Judaism prior to the late 11th and early 12th century. There was no Judaism prior to the first crusade of 1096. That's a measurement of how that one can use to deny the existence of a Judaism, because there was no Judaism before the first crusade. You see, the first crusade has a lot to do with Judaism. You had the Baron army going into Northeast Africa. That's where your crusades took place. The Europeans coming out of Europe, going into Africa, creating what we know today as the Crusades. Okay. Now, the first Baron army that was sent over there was under the leadership of Godfrey and his brother Baldwin. Godfrey and his brother Baldwin, or Godfrey was a student of Rashid. Let me tell you about Rashid. See, Rashid, Solomon Bar Isaac called Rashid, was the first one to create the formula for Judaism. He created what is known as Sefer HaYasa literature. Sefer means books, Ha means of, Yasa means books of the upright ones, talking about Abraham, Isaac, and Jacob. Those are the upright ones. He wrote and created these stories.
He was the world's first rabbi.
The welfare state has done to Black Americans what slavery could not have done, Jim Crow and the harshest racism could not have done, namely to destroy the Black family. Many people believe that the route to economic power is to have political power. And there's absolutely no evidence to support that. Government cannot create a special privilege for one American without simultaneously creating a special disadvantage for some other American.
The phrase "takes no prisoners" should have been invented to describe Walter Williams.
I was a radical in terms of the civil rights movement. I was not a supporter of Martin Luther King, but more a supporter of Malcolm X.
You don't have to scratch your head and say, I wonder what Walter's really saying, what he really means.
I am very, very happy that I got virtually all of my education before it became fashionable for white people to like Black people.
Does the country need more people like Walter Williams? More people who are intellectually honest, intellectually rigorous, tell it like it is, and don't engage in groupthink? I don't see how we could have too many Walter Williamses.
Major funding for Walter Williams' Suffer No Fools was provided by Dunn's Foundation and Searle Freedom Trust. Additional funding was provided by Beach Foundation, Harvey Cody, Donors Trust, the Hickory Foundation, William Shepard, and the Woodford Foundation for Limited Government.
Walter Williams begins his day early, before most are out of bed. His enthusiasm for life is based on sound advice he received as a young man. Learn to come early.
Okay. I'm trying to figure out why. I guess they put a commercial on here. I don't know why it bounced off of that. It wasn't even. But anyways, we're gonna talk a little bit more about heaven being within the individual and how society has made it. Well, the particular society that we are
pushed
in.
south.
Let me turn this off.
Yeah, the ones that unable to stay, they went south into Africa, going south into Africa. Okay. And then the influx of Europeans kept coming in, you see. So the day you look over there, you see nothing but European faces under the name of Arab. Okay. And you see very few indigenous Africans over there. Right. See, anywhere Europeans go, they bring death and destruction and disease and ignorance with them. Everywhere they go. See, our ancient Egyptian ancestors civilized this whole entire world. The Europeans
terrorized this whole entire world, including themselves in Europe. They are at this very moment terrorizing themselves right now in Europe, Kosovo, and other parts of Europe. At this very moment.
Okay, I want to move out of North Africa, but I just want to actually one other question. When I say move out, I want to progress. But in terms of the spiritual system that the Egyptians, that the ancient Egyptians had, they were able to maintain that. In terms of Greek, you say Lagi Sola wanted to be made into ancient Egyptian god, and the Egyptians along with the Egyptian deity. And you got a Melchite Coptic church.
Not a church, but a sacred society, yeah.
Society to accept it. Now, how was this then accepted by the Romans themselves? Did they begin to follow or worship, or how does that work?
Well, see, every Greek, starting with every Greek author, Ptolemy one Lagi, whose image was used and given the name Serapis, whose image is still used today and given the name Christ. Every Ptolemy, every Ptolemaic ruler and Roman ruler, after Ptolemy one Lagi called Sotar, they sat on the throne and ruled Egypt as the vicar of Serapis. So they, the Greeks and the Romans, began to worship Serapis and Isis, one of the ancient Egyptian female deities in the ancient Egyptian divine triad of Osiris the father, Isis the holy Hathor cow mother, and Horus Jr., the S-U-N of that triad. You see? So this Serapis is a European white man that is known back then when Serapis, known today as Jesus Christ, was always matched with Isis. So the African female, Isis. Okay, and that's what the Greeks and the Romans first began to worship. Okay, now another thing is said about suppose black popes of Rome. That's not true. Let me go back to that. You see, Constantine gave Sylvester I, this is in my book, I advise an individual to buy my book, The Historical Origin of Christianity, to really understand what I'm talking about, because I lay it out in a progressive progression, okay? And after the donation of Constantine was given to Sylvester I by one Constantine and accepted by Sylvester I, the donation of Constantine goes like this. If Sylvester accepted the donation of Constantine, he was given Constantine's imperial power and authority over the Coptic Egyptian community.
Now that community is separate from the Romans.
Oh yes, and the Greeks too. And what he wanted after Sylvester accepted the donation of Constantine was to be baptized in that community and made part of it. He had no authority over that community. In essence, he was given making Sylvester the HNIC, correct, of the Coptic Egyptians, in charge of the Coptic Egyptians only, on a temporal basis, provided that Sylvester would get the rest of the Coptic Egyptians to worship this European image, then known as Serapis, now known today as Jesus the Christ. It's all in my book.
Coptic Egyptian system, spiritual system, was
Coptic Egyptians, they continued to pay homage to their ancestors in that ancient Egyptian divine tribe of Osiris, the father, Isis, the holy Hathor cow mother, and Horus Jr., the Sun. That's what they paid homage to. Whereby the Greeks worship this Serapis that we know today as Jesus Christ, along with Isis. Okay?
What was their worship?
It's got to explain it to you different.
Yeah, but I mean, in values,
Physical form, not spiritual form. See, the ancient Egyptians had a spiritual connection to their ancestors that made up the ancient Egyptian divine tribe. There was a spiritual connection there. But that's their ancestors. That's something in reality to them. The Greeks and the Romans worship Serapis, which is man-made, the created creature, and Isis, the only.
So I'm not going to stay on too long. So basically,
real, but not
what
real
I,
to the
this
Greeks and
proves
Romans.
what
They
I
had
had
no
stated,
spiritual connection to Isis. See, they had no spiritual connection.
Hypothesis when I started doing my studies into our relationship with this European. So basically, reality is built under their false premises. So now, we as lost people, many of us subscribe to what the ideology that they put out. But as you notice, as we speak up and speak out about how a lot of majority of it is so untrue, that we get pushback. We get pushback. So just remember that saying, what's good for the gander is not good for the goose. It can even mean that what they think is good for them is not good for the world. It doesn't just have to be them being selfish and allowing themselves to only have greatness, while the rest of us suffer out of the actions that they perpetrate upon the earth that we live in. So with that said, true love, real peace, the higher self, the soul. Till next time.